All right. We're joining now the game in progress between Helen and Joseph. Um, Jumping over to our brackets for a second, you see that Helen and Joseph are here in bracket D. Joseph after beating Dell, Helen after beating Grace, so uh, should be a good match. And we have here a French defense. Normally, White plays in challenging the center. White plays a little bit different, but we still the French anyway. This is the pawn advances here, and tends to take away some of the squares there. And White's idea is usually to play the pawn up to here, prevent White from getting this pawn here, fighting for the center with the c pawn. We have bishop out, knight. This knight is headed to here to try and take this pawn, and after this pawn comes to c5 here, we have knight c6, and these knights will team up on the pawn from different sides there. This is also an idea. Usually it's after this pawn is developed to try and target this guy. And Joseph getting connect 4. Black reinforcing the bishop, just kind of anchoring it in position there, not trading right away. I do like that. This hasn't really gone as a normal French defense, so lots going on. Moves are going really fast here. This move White sort of pins his own knight now. Now the knight can't move. It's not in danger of being lost because it's defended, but it potentially could be. Now developing with the knight, putting some pressure on here. The bishop, you just have to keep careful not to cover the e7 square, because that's at the moment that's the only square the bishop can retreat to. Say if White attacked it. We've got bishop development move, attacking the knight, threatening to damage Black's pawn structure. Black double defends it. And White's doing more development. Probably White should be moving the queen and castling queenside. There's a nice strong cover of pieces on that side. Normally White wants to castle kingside, but now that this pawn is moved, it's not ideal. Not enough coverage on that side of the board. Black's sort of weakening their pawn structure as well. And now the knight's being threatened and can actually just take here. This pawn looks like it's been hanging for a couple moves. It's only defended once. It's maybe defended through the bishop, but only if the bishop can move with an attack, like maybe check or something. Probably safe to take it, and Black does take it. There's an exchange, and White wins the pawn. Goes in for a check. Oh, but the square is defended by the queen and drops the piece. That's unfortunate. And then, okay, we do have c5. And probably we could have immediately played d4, taking advantage of the pin. The knight was pinned in place, and so d4 immediately attacks the knight, and the knight doesn't have time to get out of the way. So probably a missed opportunity there. Okay, we have some pawns storming the king. I like storming the pawns on the same side as the king is on. So, and White is doing a pawn storm on the other side of the board, and this is typically how it goes. It's a bit of a race. Whose pawns are going to get there first? Who has the better defense? Developing move, connecting the the pieces that can go horizontally anyway. Captures, and now this H file is open. Getting the queen over could be problematic. Okay, bishop takes g6 now, spotting the undefended pawn, and Helen's pieces are quickly disappearing in front of the king, a lot faster than her attack is going on the other side of the board. And this is some good pressure here. Maybe a move now is getting the queen over to the other side of the board, maybe help with the defense here. You could also look at maybe pushing this pawn, opening the diagonal for the queen a little bit, trying to lock the structure down. If takes, you can't take back because the bishop covers that square, and so does the rook. So that's kind of a safe position. And if white just pushes the pawn, it's hard for the pawns to keep marching. The taking, I don't mind that. This pawn is pinned. You can't capture back because the rook and the queen see each other, and you'd lose the queen. So tactically this works. Positionally, it's a little bit uncomfortable. Now, if you take this, you undefend the pawn on d5, which is already attacked twice, and lines up the rook with your queen. It's pretty uncomfortable. I'd be hesitant to play that. Maybe now you have time to throw this in and solve all your problems. Get that piece defended by the other pawns, cutting off the rook's control of this square. At the moment, the rook, the queen, and the knight all see that square. This cuts off the queen, but doesn't cut off the rook and the knight. Queen moves, threatening checkmate in one here. Now you have to respond with queen e7, guarding that square, except there's actually two checkmates threatened. Queen h8 is also checkmate. Now you're going to have problems. How do you guard both of those? I think this is already over. Throwing the queen into sacrifice, but it's not going to work. Either of these squares are game over. White should not get distracted by the free queen because checkmate is worth more. And finds it. So first game goes to Joseph. All right, let's give it a few seconds here for the rematch. That game was played pretty quickly. Both sides still have more than 5 minutes on their clock. So fast game. Probably the mistake of black here was allowing the king side to be opened. That attack on the king side proved to be very effective. What would you do instead? I don't know. Okay, going on to game 2. We have queen's pawn. And queen's pawn. Queen's pawn opening. Okay. Not an aggressive move, but you could kind of transpose into the London by playing these guys here. My favorite opening. Often criticized for being passive, but and repetitive, but I think that comes down to how you play it. If you play it aggressively, if you adapt to your opponent's moves, then you've got a lot of flexibility in how it works. I think this is a common idea of black, is to put a bishop on this diagonal. White wants to put the bishop on that diagonal, so taking it over early can kind of make it uncomfortable for white. We see a king pawn being sacrificed here. It wasn't defended, so black knows that and just captured it. And now uh, this does let black's bishop get out quickly. And we see there's some fight to try and win this pawn back. It's now defended twice. Black or white might want to attack the queen, and I like that behind the queen it kind of x-rays this weak square in the opponent's camp. Maybe even considering attacking it from both sides here. That could be something. Black sidesteps that, keeping an eye on this pawn, but getting off that diagonal. White could consider playing this anyway. I'd be a little bit nervous about this pawn moving forward, but at the moment you can capture it and there's no big issue. I think black was looking to go back to keep an eye on this pawn, realizing that they left it undefended. Queen comes this way to try and win this pawn back. Black's got 2 defenders now. White's got 2 attackers. White needs 1 more attacker to successfully capture the pawn. There's also there's an idea of pushing this pawn and moving the bishop here, pinning the queen and winning it. A4 is not, at this level is not a super obvious move of what's going on. You'd have to notice the fact that the queen and king are lined up and that there's a potential pin here, and that what does A4 do? A4 is trying to defend B5 so that the queen cannot just capture it directly. Another idea was putting the queen on B3 instead, which keeps an eye on the pawn and this square, and also prepares this kind of move. And even if black defends it, it kind of works for lining up the bishop over here, so you can kind of get this like multi-purpose attack going. Also works maybe for moving the bishop to d5, where both pieces kind of attack this b7 square and the queen has to move out of the way. So this seems like a really good diagonal for white's pieces to be on. Black's taking some time to think, trying to figure out maybe how to keep the pawn safe, maybe how to launch an attack. This knight move is pretty obvious. I think it's adds a new defender to this piece, so white has to figure out what to do. Notice that this pawn now can move with an attack on the queen, and the pawn attacks the knight and the bishop attacks the queen. White's going to lose pieces by leaving the queen and the bishop in line with each other, so needs to move out to a different square. Helen needs to win this game to keep it even, so definitely want to avoid tactics like this. Black's move aims to free up this bishop, but does restrict the other bishop. Okay, white develops a piece. Black... Okay, and this last move undefends the bishop, and black spots it right away, capturing it. Maybe already thinking about capturing it, so not too hard to see. This bishop goes down, which is just a trade after the pawn takes back. And that pawn recapture is going to really strengthen the e4 pawn. And now it's going to be really hard to capture it. It does resolve the discovered attack on the queen, though, so white is safer now. We still have this potential pin going on. White just needs to play a move to set it up. A4 still works, defended by the queen. Taking a moment to kick out the bishop. Bishop falls back. Now you can't really play f4 here. You'd like to take all the bishop's squares away, but The problem is black can play captures en passant, and it's still defended. Okay, it chooses not to. And then I guess you have to capture here, but that brings the bishop back in. If you don't capture, black's going to take and leave you with pawns isolated. And that's not ideal. You'd probably rather have the two connected pawns. But you know, it's tricky because you're giving black connected pawns, and one of them's past all your other pawns, and that can be kind of dangerous. White throws some complication into the mix. I don't mind this. You know, there's still this captures, but you know, if you can make it confusing for your opponent, sometimes that can go in your favor. Tactically, you know, black can just take this pawn and even take with the bishop. They're up a pawn, and the bishop's got free range again, free reign again, and yeah, best move is go for the tactic. Take advantage of the fact that black's king has not gotten to safety yet. Another, you know, another idea is maybe just getting off of the diagonal of the bishop at some point. Maybe don't have the time right now. It's black's move. Black has to decide if they're going to capture. You can't capture this way because the rook can take, and the pawn and rook both defend the other pawn, so the bishop doesn't get its freedom. So you definitely want to capture this way. But it looks like the move has distracted Joseph, and he's not too sure how to proceed. Buying Helen some time on the clock. She's up 2.5 minutes at this point. That could be a good advantage. You just need to use the time to find the tactics, to find the win, find the best move. You know, if you spot one of these moves, you can line up this tactic, and that'll win you the game. So there's strong opportunities here. Black does capture the right way, and now take, and the bishop's got an excellent square where it's not going to be bothered. That also gives black two connected passed pawns. They're past all of white's pawns. They're past the point where any of the white's pawns can stop them. These are really powerful, and you know, could be used to try and win the game here. Every time they move and attack something, they sort of gain momentum, moving closer to the end of the board. The trick is just to keep them close to each other and keep them connected. White, maybe giving up a pawn here. You know, maybe the idea is to put the queen in line with the rook, but black also has the option of taking with the knight, and after this, it's not super clear what to do. Yeah, white needs to unpin the knight by moving the king to the side. And this is a nice fork, attacking both the queen and the rook at the same time. White is going to be hard-pressed to find a way out of this. And I don't think there is one. I think your best option is So just move your queen out of the way, save the queen, let the knight take, and take back with your king, so that your king is off the diagonal with the freeing the knight up from the pin. The only trouble is black's 2 moves from getting a rook to the d file, which would then be staring at your king and be super annoying again. Also, the queen can come easily to that square, so that's to this file. So that's a potential problem. Then you have to retake with the king. And at least you unpinned your knight, so you need to keep your pieces active. Joseph's managed to get 8 points up and get quite a huge advantage. This move is killer because it comes with an attack on the knight and the rook at the same time. How do you defend that? You know what? I would start with this. Capture the rook and check, force the king to move, and maybe it doesn't solve the problem, but maybe it buys some time. It does win back some material, and now we drop that. Best move still capture the rook, even the material out. Comes with check. You could get a potential attack going here. This knight is 1 hop away, and Helen finds it. If the king steps into d7, the knight's going to come into the game. Now you can't go back here for a check because that's guarded by the bishop. Your bishop's also under attack, so you might have to think about coming back to defend it. Maybe moving the king over to defend it. It's hard to find another check here. The only checks are ones that lose. Black picked a really good square to hide on. It's not in range of the knight, and it's not in range of a bishop. So white captures the pawn, but it's going to lose the bishop. And now the king's only got 1 move, and this pawn push looks deadly. This check is also not very fun. Moving into the corner is problematic. Namely, after this pawn push, the queen is threatening, not checkmate because the knight defends it, but threatening problems anyway. This can now go with check, so this is also problematic. Now if you move back here, you've got 2 more checks that can come. This one keeps the pawn defended and forces the king out of the way. I think it's just game over. Black decides to bring another piece to the attack. Might have had enough to end it already. Probably just bishop over, king moves to d2, and then queen. And I think that's checkmate. Trying to get the queen back into the game. It's kind of critical. This checkmate's still on the board. Black doesn't see it, giving Helen opportunities to regroup here. Definitely hard to do with just the knight and the queen on the board. Maybe trying to distract the queen works, but the queen can always drop down, but then you win the pawn, so that's not the end of the world. White's trying to queen their own pawn. I don't mind that so much, but Black's got his own threats here, and after this, forcing the king out of the way, Black can queen that piece and have 2 queens on the board. And now this leaves only 2 squares available, and there's probably a checkmate here. I think it's right there was checkmate. This also works. No, wait, what's the problem? The queen's got to take. And I think queen taking back is checkmate because the bishop guards the 2 squares. You see, the queen covers all these squares, and the bishop covers this diagonal. So That's a mate. The only move, queen captures, leads to a checkmate, and I kind of expect Joseph to find it. He's got a minute and 49 seconds to find it. It's probably over. GG's, as they say. King's got nowhere to hide. So that pawn push just not coming in time to be any good. Helen needs to find the only move. It's actually the only valid move, so you can't even not find it. You have to play it. The king can't move, and you can't block that check. So it's the only move for the game to move forward. She doesn't find it in 40 seconds. She'll lose on time anyway. So I think this is kind of a foregone conclusion regardless. Black would have to miss the checkmate and then blunder the rest of the game pretty badly to lose at this point. Joe offering a draw. I don't understand why. Quite the gentleman. The draw was accepted. And that still gives Joe 1.5 points to Helen's 0.5. Means Joe still wins. Mighty gentlemanly thing to do. And Joseph will be moving on to the next round.